Hail, Dicelings, and ready your quills, because today we will write the lore and legends of Legend of the Five Rings. I am Chris, your host on Drop Dice here, huge fan of Legend of the Five Rings. As you guys kind of saw in the last video, I did a great comparison of kind of where AEG left things, where Fantasy Flight is picking them up. But from this point forward in the series, we're going to focus on smaller topics, easier to digest, and smaller video lengths, just focusing on a very specific thing and then moving to the next one. I'll release these as I have time, but let's kind of start with the foundation. A lot of us are coming from the old version of L5R, and that's how you guys have known me in the past, but I'm also getting brand new people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about setting basics and things that you should understand coming into the world. So first off is Legend of the Five Rings is a samurai drama game. It's not really an adventure game. More of what you do in the story is about the drama and the interaction between people. Yes, there are monsters in the world, but the monsters only serve as part of the threat. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, it's kind of like a medieval Japan kind of Game of Thrones feel. People can rise and fall politically, and then they can turn around and start as nobodies and become great generals. There are forces inside the world, kind of like the undead or the frozen zombies and stuff from Game of Thrones, that the world has to be aware of. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. But let's kind of start at the beginning. Basically, before time was recorded, the sun and the moon fell in love with each other. After a few centuries, they decided to have children, and they decided to end up with a total of 10 children. Those children are what we know as the kami. I'll go ahead and name them because their names are important to the setting. Akado, Bayushi, Doji, Fulang, Hida, Ryushin, Shiba, Shinjo, Tagashi, and then the current emperor, Hanate. So, with that in mind, these people set out to create their own clans. And the reason that Hanate became the emperor is there was a competition between the children to see who would be the victor. Now, the only one that wasn't included, well, actually, there's two that weren't included. Fulang and Ryushin. Ryushin was actually devoured and completely consumed by his father. Think kind of the Greek tragedy where Kronos consumes all of his children, but eats a stone instead of Zeus. It's basically a very strong parallel to that story. In fact, Amaterasu gave Lord Onotangu the stone, which he believed to be Hanate because he was drunk and poisoned. Hanate then cut his father open, and he bled amongst the earth, creating law and chaos from the law of his mother and the chaos of his own father. Of that, humans were created. Jade and obsidian were also created from the tears of the moon for jade, and blood of the moon for obsidian, and tears of the sun to create jade. I always get a little backwards on that because basically in the old timeline, the moon was a male at first and the sun was a female at first. They passed and were replaced, and their genders got swapped. So sometimes I mix those up, just kind of bear with me here. But the first Lord Moon was the male, and then the first Lady Sun was, of course, a lady. So that kind of gives us an idea of why those types of minerals are super important to the setting. Let's talk about a few things here. Fulang, for example. Fulang basically was against his father's behavior, but took it in a more violent kind of tangential path. He actually becomes kind of a bad guy within the setting, and he brings with him what is called the taint. Taint is what corrupts your character. Think of it like insanity in games like Call of Cthulhu or Corruption or Dark Side Points in Star Wars. It's kind of the same concept. As you gain it, there's not really a good way to get rid of it. In the past game, there has been ways to get rid of it, but usually it meant transferring it to someone else. And it really wasn't the kind of thing that a lot of people wanted to do. For example, there was a spell that only 5 people from a very specific family that were of rank 5 or higher, which is one of the highest ranks that player characters typically get to, had to cast this spell as a ritual for several days at a time, and then they took all of the taint that was on one person and divided it amongst the 5 casters. So the 5 casters became tainted, which could be ultimately way more dangerous than having one samurai being tainted. There are ways to slow it down and stop its progression, but ultimately it's kind of like a thing that will eventually consume you. if you don't try to live by Bushido and maintain honor. So that brings up the next point. Basically, with the kami taking over, they decided to set down a code of laws and ethics that humans, their children, could live up to. And this is really where Bushido comes in. This is also where the Way comes in, which is kind of the L5R analog to Taoism or Shintoism. It's a little bit of both and mixed in one. So these kind of codes and ethics basically create the foundation for society. It creates a hierarchy structure that is very similar to real-world Japan, that there's an emperor and he has certain people below him, and it feeds out to the clan lords that feed down to the daimyos, which are in charge of each family, and then it feeds down to local magistrates, and then it feeds down to mayors, governors, etc. So there is a huge bureaucratic structure that's in place. And that's really important to know as players, because that bureaucratic structure will be both a tool for you to succeed and a hindrance for you in a lot of cases. So you have to be ready to approach that and look into it more. So a lot of political stuff can happen in the setting. The setting is also rife for conflict, both socially and physically. The wars get carried out between the different clans. It hasn't been outlawed yet that the clans war against each other, so they still do that. There's different rivalries and bitterness between them. And when I talk about each clan, we'll talk about how they feel about the other clans, at least according to the general lore. That may change with Fantasy Flight changing some stuff, but I'll talk about how AEG in the past has presented it, because Fantasy Flight hasn't given us a lot of guidance. So you have kind of this idea of the imperial structure. There is an imperial city. Think of it kind of like the Forbidden City, that only the imperial family can go there. The walls are locked out from outsiders, and to be just invited in is considered an honor. And the closer you get to the emperor, it's considered a greater honor. That is very much the feel of the current imperial city. So overall, the setting is really neat and interesting. There's a crazy god, basically, that's running around the world trying to destroy things and corrupt things. Basically, Fu Lang, when he fell to the earth, he became corrupted by more or less like the L5R devil, and he became the bad guy that he is. I suspect that they'll go more into that, and I'll maybe make a video that's just talking about Fu Lang, because he is such an interesting character to the setting. But I don't want to reveal too much of what happened in AEG. If you're really interested in that, again, check out the wiki. That's going to be your best solution to get the fix, to find out what happened. For my new players to the game, the things that I want you to think about is it's a samurai culture. So there are things that are really important. Bushido, for one. And then there is the idea of what you view your duty and what you view your personal goals and things like that. Those are going to be in direct conflict with each other a lot of the times, because your clan is going to expect certain things out of you, but according to society, you need to present yourself a certain way. This is what's called keeping face. Keeping face is super important in the game. It's how you maintain kind of the idea that you are following the rules and you're doing things the way that is expected of you. If you lose face, you can lose honor, which means that you may not get invited to the next winter court, or you may receive a duty station that's not quite preferable. For example, the winters are especially harsh in Rukugan, so you could end up in a guard post in the middle of nowhere for an entire winter with very little firewood as punishment for a faux pas done in court. So following kind of the social rules of court and knowing how to manipulate them in their favor is going to be a thing that you play up inside this game. If you want to see examples of that, check out any of the L5R videos on here. Pretty much every single one of them, I set a scenario where they have to use their cunning to get past it sometimes. Some clans are a little stronger at it, for example, the Scorpion or the Crane, whereas other clans choose a more direct approach, like the Crab. Each clan is unique and different, and we'll talk about them in their own videos. But I think that's about it for the basic setting stuff. We will be releasing more and more videos on this channel, kind of working through each of the content, introducing this at the most basic level for my newest players, and talking about some of the things that may be a little different for my returning players. For everybody who is trying the beta, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Make videos of your own, reference my videos and send me a link to yours. Whatever the case is, just have fun, play the game, and give feedback, because I want this to be a great set of L5R. I've already planned to buy, purchase, and basically display them like a holy shrine inside my room, because I've been wanting to update my books, and since moving down to Houston, I haven't had a whole lot of the L5R series because they went out of print. So I'm really excited for the new print, and as you guys can tell, I'm going full bore on it. If you guys like this video, make sure and thumbs up, share, subscribe. As always, I will see you guys at the gaming table.